I started playing games when I was 25 years old. When I was younger, my parents really didn't let me do much else other than schoolwork and more schoolwork. But in the last few years, I've become completely hooked by games, which provide a type of addicting escapism that no other medium offers. With my late start, I can confidently say that I am a thoroughly mediocre gamer, making my way through different games that may or may not be above my skill level. Hollow Knight was a game that I was honestly hesitant to start. I had seen trailers, and while the art and design looked beautiful and the reviews were excellent, I just wasn't super interested in being a bug walking around a world filled with other bugs. I spend most of my actual life avoiding bugs, and no matter how many times my boyfriend tries to tell me how cool dragonflies are, I'm really just not that interested. And I had never played a platformer before, and knew that it would probably give me a challenge. Only after a trusted friend told me that this was one of his favorite games of all time did I decide to give it a chance, almost 4 years after it had first been released. And man, did I want to kill my friend when I first started playing. It was a brutal challenge for a noob like me. Fighting enemies was hard. Fighting the bosses was nearly impossible. And I could barely get around the map as I struggled to grasp the very basics of platforming. I was beyond frustrated and nearly quit the game a couple times. I even Googled quitting Hollow Knight just to see if others had done the same thing and if there would be any shame in just walking away. But for some reason that I cannot explain, something continually drew me back to the depths of Hollow Nest, and slowly, with time, like many hours of time, I got better and better and eventually felt that chronic frustration melt away. So here are a few of my thoughts on how a relatively skill-deficient gamer found herself falling in love with a game about bugs. Let's start with the world of Hollow Knight, or Hollow Nest. I generally love exploring a well-created world in a video game, and Hollow Nest is as beautiful as it is vast. You can truly get lost in the post-apocalyptic tunnels of Hollow Nest. Like literally lost if you're as directionally challenged as I am. So when I would inevitably find myself out in the wilderness without a map, I'd summon my boyfriend in for navigational help, and after the first 12 distress calls, I could sense him silently screaming in his head.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
But as lost as I would get, I would always generally know which area I was in. Because Team Cherry did such a wonderful job of creating vivid biomes, each populated with their own unique architecture and characters. These range from the beautifully constructed City of Tears, to the lush groves of Green Path, to the terror-inducing, pants-shitting shithole that is Deep Nest. Fuck you, magically appearing spiders. Fuck you, little bugs that spew infection at me. And fuck you, giant clawed slug things that just slash me to death. In the end, though, it all comes together to create an incredibly rich, believable world that I just couldn't stop exploring. A big part of exploring the world is platforming, and for someone who has never played a platformer in her life or any Metroidvania game, it got ugly. Thorns, spikes, acid, crystal shards were in a 4-way battle as the bane of my existence. And if my knight could talk, he'd probably say, "Baby, don't hurt me no more." Yeah. One other thing I want to mention is the checkpoint mechanism of Hollow Knight, which is basically just a series of benches that can be found while wandering through the various caverns and passageways of the world. Whenever you sit on a bench, the game saves your progress. So I would always be beyond relieved to stumble upon one while out exploring. But to a piddling gamer like me, the benches felt so few and far between that Hollow Nest's Parks and Recreation department may as well have been run by this guy.
I'd work all night if it meant nothing got done.
At first, it was frustrating to die at the hands of a boss and have to trek back through enemies and obstacles just to give it another go. And really, there's no worse feeling than knowing you're close to one of those sacred benches while a mantis just swipes away your last bit of health and all your hard-earned geo. But I came to realize that all of this forced me to get better at the game, and I really did feel like such a badass platforming through later areas in the game smoothly and fluidly. At least until I got to White Palace. Really, my right thumb will never be the same after full-on panic button mashing for hours on end. What was more numerous than the benches of Hollow Nest were the bosses, coming in a variety of shapes, sizes, demeanors, and difficulties. The bosses were intimidating as hell at first. I mean, the False Knight is just a large dude. This was the first game I ever played where there really isn't much space to run away, so my instincts of running, hiding in the corners, or just spamming attack would result in immediate death. But I would eventually come to see these bosses as my favorite part of the game. Each presented me with a new challenge, and over time, I ditched all of my natural intuition and learned how to dodge while staying close enough to the boss to sneak in my own attacks. The satisfaction of progressing from getting decimated in a fight before the soundtrack's chorus even had a chance to kick in, to getting into a rhythm of dodging and getting hits off was such a satisfying high. Slowly learning and mastering the attack patterns of each boss and figuring out a way to sneak in my own attacks was like learning a complicated, intricate dance. And no battle captured this feeling better than the Mantis Lords. Don't get me wrong, the path to that level of competency for each boss was often a long and frustrating process, one filled with my boyfriend giving me backseat advice that tested the strength of our relationship. Don't get hit is not helpful advice, by the way. But so many boss battles felt like small Everests that were each their own joy to figure out and conquer. Except Nosk. Fuck Nosk. The story of Hollow Knight is subtle, to say the least. Very few parts of the story are just handed to you. And I was really too busy trying not to die for the most part to seek out what parts were out there. I honestly missed like 95% of the narrative and had to watch an hour-long in-depth lore video on YouTube after beating the game, shout out to Mossbag, just to figure out what the hell was going on. For an embarrassingly long time, I thought the Radiance, the orange infection coursing through Hollow Nest that's pretty central to the entire damn story, was just bug blood. And my mind was blown when I saw the fourth seat in the Mantis Lord's chamber that used to belong to the Traitor Lord that had just been there all along. But I think that lack of clarity is intentional, or at least that's what I'm telling myself. You truly feel like the knight when playing through the game, a small lost bug that only understands a tiny sliver of what's actually happening in the vast, dangerous world around it. Lastly, I want to touch upon the music and sound of Hollow Knight. The soundtrack is absolutely beautiful and so varied. Most regions and many bosses have their own themes, and a few tracks are legit jams, like the Dung Defender song is a bop. Additionally, the actual sounds of attacking, jumping, dashing, bouncing, and just walking through the world of Hollow Nest are also rich and satisfying. And of course, who can forget some of the best sounds of the entire game? Hollow Knight is an incredible game, but it took me some time to truly appreciate it. If you had asked me when I was dying during my 30th attempt to get past the primal aspids in the Colosseum, if I would recommend Hollow Knight to any other mediocre gamers out there, I would have recommended this game be buried deep in the depths of the abyss, never to be touched again. Jumanji style.
What if someone digs it up.
May God have mercy on his soul.
But now I literally can't stop aimlessly wandering around Hallow Nest looking for anything to do while waiting desperately for Silksong to drop. This is a game that is immensely challenging, endlessly frustrating, but ultimately so rewarding to play and progress through.
Get through!